Okay, everybody, this one is called intervention, and this is a principle under international law, and so we're going to talk about war crimes. Under international law of warfare, all parties must appear by nom de guerre because an alien enemy cannot maintain an action during the war in his own name. A mixed war is one made on one side by public authority and the other by mere private persons. So you get a police encounter is warfare. Any court case is warfare. And so you have to understand that. And war crimes definitely apply. Some people have been having trouble getting their head around this war crimes thing. And so I went and recently sent a registered letter, and we're going to talk about that. I'm basically a couple hundred registered letters, and we'll talk about the results. Governments descend to the level of mere private corporation and take on characteristics of mere private citizen, where private corporate commercial paper, Federal Reserve notes, and securities, checks, is concerned. For purposes of suit, such corporations and individuals are regarded as entities entirely separate from government. Okay, so when you use that stuff, you just gave up your sovereignty. International law rule adopted for areas under federal legislative jurisdiction federalizes state civil law, including common law. The rule serves to federalize not only the statutory but the common law of a state. State and federal venue discuss the civil laws effective in an area of exclusive federal jurisdiction are federal law, notwithstanding their derivation from state laws, and a cause arising under such laws may be brought in or removed to federal district courts. And this is taken from jurisdictional federal areas within the states, report of the Interdepartmental Committee for the Study of Jurisdictional Federal Areas within the states, Part 2, a text of the law of legislative jurisdiction submitted to the Attorney General and transmitted to the President June 1957. Under international law, they can assault you and kidnap you and falsely imprison you, and if you sign anything, you make it legal by doing so. Copies of these documents can be found in my private group at Yahoo called Administrating Your Public Servants. For a complete set of YouTube videos with private information, shares a DVD with over 50 searchable law dictionaries and other books and forms, contact me privately at engineerwin@yahoo.com. Donations to support this work are appreciated. I prefer gold or silver coin, but as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept the IOUs, the military script, the Federal Reserve notes, the PayPal gifts, the checks, the money orders. Send me an email for particulars. Note, under the law martial, only the criminal jurisdiction of a military court is recognized law. But as Article 3 says, the civil courts can continue wholly or in part as long as the civil jurisdiction does not violate the military orders laid down by the commander-in-chief or one of his commanders. By this means, a military venue, jurisdiction, and authority are imposed upon the occupied populace under the disguise of the ordinary civil courts and officers of the occupied district or region, because the so-called civil authorities in an occupied district or region only act at the pleasure of a military authority. It should also be noted here that the several state legislatures, county boards of commissioners, and city councils are constantly legislating to please the edicts of the federal government, the occupying force, and that their legislation in this sense is not an exercise of state sovereignty, but instead a compliance with the edicts of the military force which occupies the several states and consequently are edicts of martial law rule. And this is taken from a book called The Non-Ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge A.H. Ellett of the Utah Supreme Courts, and it's related to a case, Diet versus Turner. This is Article 6 of the Geneva Convention relative to the protection of civilians in time of war of 1949. The present convention shall apply at the outset of any conflict or occupation mentioned in Article 2. In the territory of the parties to the conflict, the application of the present convention shall cease on the general close of military operations. In the case of occupied territory, the application of the present convention shall cease 1 year after the general close of military operations. However, the occupying power shall be bound for the duration of the occupation to the extent that such powers exercise the functions of government in such territory by the provisions of the following articles of the present convention. So there's a whole bunch of them that apply forever. Vid.me shut down on the 15th of December, and the YouTube channel called Sovereignty International is also terminated. I made the exclusive content available on my website. I have 2 subscription levels, and I accept cryptocurrencies. The basic subscription is $2.99 a month, or $19.99 a year for the videos only, or $4.99 a month, or $39.99 a year for the videos plus unlimited consultations. Now, there's a limit onto what I can do as far as the consultations are concerned, because I am not a liar. Well, an attorney. No, a liar. But I can tell you what I would do under a certain circumstance and where to find the forms. And that's the limit of what I can do. The only power that these New World Order Satanists have over us is through fraud and deception, and my agenda is to expose it for all of our benefit. I cannot fight all the battles. I need other people bringing up the right issues, and so that's why I do this. And so if you want to make it a donation, it's certainly a modest donation, but a whole bunch of people chipping in a modest donation, it adds up. So it'll be more than appreciated. Currently, I'm publishing a video a week, or actually, generally speaking, it's a video a week. I've actually got some videos that, some bunch of ideas on videos that I'm doing right now. And so I might do a couple a week for the next little while, but generally speaking, it'll be a video a week. Some of the exclusive content is an Arlington private information share, land deed training, estoppel certificates training. That Arlington private information share is 9 videos by itself. Foreclosure estoppel training, corporate denial training, toll roads notice and demand training, invoice training, notice of void judgment training, revocation of signature training, third-party witness training, federal habeas corpus training, revocation of voter registration training, and there's criminal complaint training, and there's going to be more too as I come up with more things to talk about. Lawsuit training is upcoming, and there's going to be other training, and depending on what people request. All forms, files, and other instructions are available for free on my 2 private groups called at Yahoo Groups and Google Groups. So really, I mean, the training's above and beyond. And the exclusive content will be available on my website, and you can buy a subscription there. Yet still it was difficult to set bounds to ecclesiastical ingenuity. That's the Roman cult, folks. For when they were driven out of all their former holds, they devised a new method of conveyance by which the lands were granted not to themselves directly, but to the nomina fiefs, to the use of the religious houses, thus distinguishing between the possession and the use, and receiving the actual profits, while the season of the land remained in the nominal fief, who was held by the courts of equity, then under the direction of the clergy. That's the Roman cult, folks. And that's quite the scam, isn't it? So they get to decide whether you're in a contract with them or not. Boy, that's quite the scam. To be bound in conscience to account to assesticate use for the rents and emoluments of the estate. That's taxes, folks. And it is to these inventions that our practitioners are indebted for the introduction of uses and trusts, the foundation of modern conveyancing. This is taken from Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 2, under the definition of mort main. And it was the foundation of modern conveyancing in 1835. It's still the foundation of modern conveyancing. Assumpsit, quasi-contracts, okay? This is what they like to assault you with. In its origin, an action of tort assumpsit was soon transformed into an action of contract, becoming afterwards a remedy where there was neither tort nor contract, based at first only upon an express promise. It was afterwards supported upon an implied promise and even upon a fictitious promise. Introduced as a special manifestation of the action on the case, it soon acquired the dignity of a distinct form of action which superseded debt and became concurrent with account, with case upon bailment and warranty and bills of exchange. So this is all talking about commercial stuff, okay? Bills of exchange, warranty, account, debt. This is all commerce. And competed with equity in the case of the essentially equitable quasi-contracts. And remember, under martial law, there's no common law. There is equity in martial law and admiralty, and the rules of in the federal statutes. It even says that federal courts and all courts are courts of equity and admiralty. And because there's no common law, equity can do anything it wants. Growing out of the principle of unjust enrichment. And now this is taken from the History of Assumption and 3 select essays on Anglo-American legal history, which is by this liar. Well, a lawyer. No, he's a liar. And so the last little part here is he's really proud of it. But it's taken from Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. Both in Roman and English law, there are certain obligations which are in truth not contractual, but which the law treats as if they were. They were contractual in law, but not in fact, being the subject matter of a fictitious extension of the sphere of contract to cover obligations which do not in reality fall within it. Yeah. Assault you with one of their so-called contracts. Constructive quasi-contracts are based solely upon the legal fiction or fiction of law. In other words, the Satanic Trust. Okay, so they have to assault you with their Satanic Trust to put all this stuff together. It is well-settled rule of law that he who seeks the benefits of contract must also assume the burdens. Voluntary acceptance of benefit of transaction is equivalent to consent to all obligations arising from it, so far as facts are known or ought to be known to the person accepting. You know, jail's a benefit, eh? So they get to sell you into slavery and they get to give you their benefit. That's what these Satanists do. This is all Satanism. A quasi-contractual action presupposes acceptance and retention of a benefit by one party with full appreciation of the facts under circumstances making it inequitable for him to retain the benefit without payment of its reasonable value. Yeah, we're going to assault you with the Satanic Trust, and then we're going to assault you with one of these benefits. Yeah, that's what these Satanists do. Why do you think they want Social Security numbers when you apply for a driver's license? Why do you think they want Social Security numbers when you apply for unemployment insurance or a passport or any other benefit? Okay? It's part of fabricating evidence of the slave. A kangaroo court, a term descriptive of a sham legal proceeding in which a person's rights are totally disregarded, in which the result is a foregone conclusion because of the bias of the court or other tribunal. They're all kangaroo courts. There's a kangaroo court right there. There's some whores. The judge works for the state. The prosecutor works for the state. The police are witness. The pig or witness works for the state. The vast majority, they're actually all pigs. The vast majority of the disputes that the police initiate on behalf of their employer are also adjudicated by their employer, where the plaintiff, the judge, the antagonist, the police, and the only witness, also the police, all represent the same party. And since no corpus delicti, mens rea, or acts reus can be produced, doesn't technically qualify to be heard according to its own laws. Therefore, the state, is indistinguishable from a criminal cartel. My blog is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. My email address is engineerwin@yahoo. My YouTube profile, Sovereign Living. The Sovereignty International has been deleted. My Facebook community page is deleted. My private group at Facebook called Sovereignty International is being deleted. It takes time to ban 17,000 people off your group, and I'm not going to let Facebook profit from my hard work. My Yahoo private group is called Administering Your Public Servants. My Google private group is called Administering Your Public Servants. Follow me on Twitter at Engineer Win. Follow me on Steemit at Sovereignty International, and I have a BitChute profile, but I don't have all my videos up there. Okay, so this is going back to the Article 6 of the Geneva Convention that we were talking about earlier, and so I'll just summarize what this says, that there's a whole bunch of articles of the Geneva Convention relative to the protection of civilians in time of war of 1949 that are effective for the duration of the occupation. This is Article 8. Protected persons may in no circumstances renounce in part or entirely the rights secured to them by the present convention or by special agreements referred to in the foregoing article, if such there be. So this is all related. We're going to talk about intervention here pretty quick, and so we're just laying the foundation for it. So you cannot sign away your rights. This is Article 27. Protected persons are entitled in all circumstances to respect for their persons, their honor, their family rights, their religious convictions. So they can't assault you with their Satanism. And then if you go to the bottom paragraph, it says that without prejudice to the provisions relating to their state of health, age, and sex, all protected persons shall be treated with the same consideration by the party to the conflict in whose power they are, without any adverse distinction based in particular on race, religion, or political opinion. And so, again, that's a war crime for them to persecute you for a political opinion. And it talks about it actually in other places as well. This is Article 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, and this right includes the freedom to change his religion and belief, and freedom, either alone or in community with others, or in public or private, to manifest his religion or belief in teaching, practice, worship, and observance. The party to the conflict, this is Article 29. The party to the conflict in whose hands protected persons may be is responsible for the treatment accorded to them by its agents, irrespective of individual responsibility which may be incurred. So they can't sit there and say that you were damaged, but we're just going to go ahead and it was this pig over here that did it, and so we're going to wash our hands of it. You can go ahead and take his measly amount of property, and that's all you get. No, that's not how it works. The corporation's responsible. This is Article 31. No physical or moral coercion can be exercised against protected persons, in particular to obtain information from them from third parties. And so this could be used against the NSA, the CIA, Facebook, the banksters compelling disclosure of a social security number. It can also be used against the pigs when they coerce information from you on the side of the road. And so, again, if they start yelling at you, then that's coercion. No one shall be subjected to arbitrary arrest, detention, or exile, Article 9 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This is Article 33 of the Geneva Convention. No protected person may be punished for an offense he or she has not personally committed. Collective penalties and likewise all measures of intimidation or of terrorism are prohibited. Well, I mean, they try and intimidate you. They try and terrorize you. The police uniform is designed to be threatening and intimidating, and the colors on the cars are designed to be intimidating, and so they are actually the terrorists. Okay, they just fabricate this war on terror so they can enslave you. Okay, the sooner you figure that out, the better. Pillage is prohibited. Pillage is when they steal your property. Reprisals against protected persons and their property are prohibited. And so all of these things are stuff that went on when I was dealing with the border pigs in Canada, okay? And so that's why we're talking about this stuff about intervention, okay? Because we're going to talk about it again in a few minutes when I go through what I did. Terrorism is a system of government that seeks to rule by intimidation. Can you spot the terrorists? I can see all sorts of them. These are big-time terrorists, okay? Now, in the use of violence or intimidation in the pursuit of political aims. These people are terrorists, okay? They're pigs, too. The taking of hostages is prohibited, Article 34, Geneva Convention, relative to the treatment of civilians in a time of war of 1949. This could be used when they force your wife to live in a foreign country because she does not have a green card or because they're holding her hostage till you accept their slave status. It is, however, true in all common law countries and has always and consistently been held that the wife and minor children take the nationality of the husband and father. That is common law doctrine. Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 13. Everyone has the right to freedom to movement and residence within borders of each state. Everyone has the right to leave any country, including his own, and to return to his country. Article 15. Everyone has the right to a nationality. No one can be arbitrarily deprived of his right to a nationality or denied the right to change his nationality. Any destruction of by the occupying power of real or personal property belonging individually or collectively to private persons or to the state or to the other public authorities or to social or cooperative organizations is prohibited. Okay, so when they steal your property and destroy it, that's a war crime. And Article 66, in the case of a breach of the penal provisions promulgated by it by virtue of the second article of paragraph 64, the occupying power may hand over the accused to its properly constituted non-political military courts. There's no such thing. On condition that the said court sit in occupied country, court of appeal shall preferably sit in occupied country. They're all bought and paid for. They're not neutral or unbiased. This is our International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. The state parties to the present covenant, including those having responsibility for the administration of non-self-governing and trust territories, that sounds like territories under military occupation, shall promote the realization of the right of self-determination and shall respect that right in conformity with the provisions of the Charter of the UN. Okay, so all persons shall be equal before the courts and tribunals in the determination of any criminal charge against him or of his rights and obligations in a suit at law. Everyone shall be entitled to a fair and public hearing by a competent, independent, and impartial tribunal established by law. They're not impartial. They're not independent. They're bought and paid for. In all cases, the duration of the period during which a protected person accused of offense is under arrest awaiting trial or punishment shall be deducted from any period of imprisonment. I know people that have been denied that. This is the Rome Statute, okay, for the International Criminal Court. Now, that doesn't apply in the USA, but it does apply in Canada. And this intervention issue that I'm talking about is dealing with Canada. And so we're going to talk about this a little bit, this is especially applicable in Canada, but the war crimes arguments can be used in the U.S. too, for sure. The problem is finding a court or a judge that wants to be a judge and he's not a bought and paid for clerk. Crimes against humanity. For purposes of this statute, crime against humanity means any of the following acts when committed as part of a widespread or systematic attack directed against any civilian population with knowledge of the attack. Enslavement, imprisonment or other severe deprivation of physical liberty in violation of fundamental rules of international law. Torture. Okay, these Canada border pigs tortured me when they put me in their room that was like probably about 40 degrees. They took away my coat, so I was sitting there freezing my butt off for over 24 hours. Persecution against any identifiable group. Okay, they persecute sovereign citizens or freemen on the land, and we're going to go through it here in a minute. How these Satanists are doing it. Okay, in Canada in particular. Okay, Rook in particular. Okay, so he's engaged in war crimes, and the Canada border pigs are engaged in war crimes. Anyways, collectively on political, racial, national, ethnic, cultural, religious, gender as applied in paragraph 3 or other grounds that are universally recognized as impermissible under international law. Okay, so that's Article 7 of the Rome Statute. So persecution against any identifiable group, imprisonment or severe deprivation of physical liberty. Okay, I spent 81 days in their jail. And enslavement. Okay, that is enslavement. Okay, when they put you in their jail, that's slavery. War is business. That's what these pigs do. Check out my other videos, Bankster Thieves Playlist, Roman Cult Playlist, Bankrupt Corporate So-Called Governments, Bar Members 1 through 3, Do-It-Yourself, How Not to Volunteer for the Selective Service in the Draft, Martial Laws Here, Do-It-Yourself No Income Tax, Do-It-Yourself Free Mail, Do-It-Yourself Kangaroo Courts 1 through 15 now, Canada Border Pigs Playlist, Bar Members and their Satanic Connections Playlist. Article 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This right includes freedom to change his religion or belief and freedom, either alone or in community with others, in public or private, to manifest it. This is Article 70. And the important thing I want to put in here is that they really can't charge you with anything unless it's with breaches of the laws and customs of war. Protected persons shall not be arrested, prosecuted, or convicted by the occupying power for acts committed or opinions expressed before the occupation or during a temporary interruption thereof, with the exception of the breaches of the laws and customs of war. So really the only thing they can charge you with is breaches of the laws and customs of war, which is a breach of the peace, okay, if you're making war. And so when you're not making war, when you're just minding your own business, they got nothing to say to you. No sentence shall be pronounced by the competent courts of the occupying power except after a regular trial. That means with a neutral and unbiased judge, and none of them are neutral and unbiased. Warning, this is the standing army you're told not to tolerate. collective penalties. Likewise, all measures of intimidation or terrorism are prohibited. Military uniforms are designed to be intimidating. Police cars, colors, black and white, are designed to be intimidating. The carrying of guns by their code enforcers is intimidating, especially if they have laws preventing you from owning guns, so that you don't have the means to defend yourself against the pigs. If the pig yells at you because you're not cooperating, that's threatening. That's intimidating. That's definitely what that is. That's what he's trying to do. No protected persons from be punished for an offense he or she has not personally committed. Collective penalties. Likewise, all measures of intimidation or terrorism are prohibited. Pillage is prohibited. Reprisals are prohibited. They're assaulting you for the crimes of the fraudulently created Satanic Trust. In Canada, they regularly seize people's vehicles that are not registered. Everyone has the right to own property alone as well as in association with others. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his property. Rights are property. Any restraint, however slight, upon another's liberty to come and go as one pleases constitutes an arrest. An illegal arrest is an assault and battery. The person so attempted to be restrained of his liberty has the same right to use force in defending himself as he would in repelling any other assault and battery. Each person has the right to resist an unlawful arrest. In such a case, the person attempting the arrest stands in the position of the wrongdoer and may be resisted by the use of force as in self-defense. No one shall be subjected to arbitrary arrest, detention, or exile. That's Article 9 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And this is more on the Rome Statute. The court shall have jurisdiction in respect of war crimes, in particular when committed as a plan or policy. For the purpose of this statute, war crimes means grave breaches of the Geneva Conventions of 12 August 1949. Okay, there's actually 4 of them. And the one that I talk about the most is the Geneva Convention for the protection of civilians in a time of war of 1949. So anyways, and then they go into some of the details like extensive appropriation of property not justified by military necessity and carried out unlawfully and wantonly, compelling a prisoner of war or other protected person to serve in the forces of a hostile power, willfully depriving a prisoner of war or other protected person of the rights of fair and regular trial, unlawful confinement. Okay, so that's the kind of stuff that happened in my case. Other serious violations, intentionally directing attacks against individual citizens, civilians not taking part in hostilities, intentionally directing attacks against civilian objects, that is, objects which are not military objectives, intentionally launching attack in the knowledge that such attack will cause incidental injury to civilians or damage to civilian objects. That's what the border pigs do every day, thousands of times every day. Destroying or seizing the enemy's property, declaring abolished, suspended, or inadmissible in a court of law the rights or actions of the nationals of the hostile party. That's what the Satanist whore Rook did, and I'll show you here in a couple minutes. Pillaging, they stole my truck and demanded $2,500 to get it back. Committing outrages upon personal dignity, in particular humiliating and degrading treatment. This is, again, this is the War Crimes Act. The Rome Statute, Article 6, the genocide. Okay, and in the U.S., they have almost word for word the same thing. For the purpose of this statute, genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. Okay, so American nationals are not U.S. citizens, and so when they persecute you for being an American national, that's genocide. Deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, forcibly transferring children to the group or another group when they steal your children. I get a lot of people contacting me about that, and this is the argument right here. In Canada, they're engaging in genocide against freemen on the land. In the U.S., they're engaging in genocide and sovereign citizens. If they steal your children because you don't want to register them, that's a form of genocide. Crime Against Humanities Act Canada means murder, extermination, enslavement, deportation, imprisonment, torture, sexual violence, persecution, or either an inhumane act or omission that is committed against any civilian population or any identifiable group, and that at the time and in the place of its commission constitutes a crime against humanity. And so that certainly falls within the category. Genocide, we talked about that already. War crime means any act or omission committed during an armed conflict at the time and in the place of its commission constitutes a war crime. Okay, well, the pig is armed, and so it's an armed conflict. crime against humanity, right? Persecution of any or any other inhumane act against any identifiable group. Gee, that sounds like Freeman on the land. Okay, that's a crime against humanity. This is Title 18, Section 1091, genocide. Whoever in time of peace or in time of war with specific intent to destroy or in whole and substantial part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group subjects the group to conditions of life that are intended to cause the physical destruction of the group in whole or in part, transfers by force children of the group to another group, shall be punished. Okay? And so it's very almost identical wording. This is the War Crimes Act of Canada again. Every person is guilty of an indictable offense who commits genocide, a crime against humanity, or a war crime. Every person who conspires or attempts to commit is an accessory after the fact in relation to or counsels in relation to an offense referred to in subsection 1 as guilty of to an indictable offense. And it's quite severe, actually. The punishment shall be sentenced to imprisonment for life if an intentional killing forms the basis of the offense, and B is liable to imprisonment for life in any other case. The definitions of this subsection apply. This is, again, War Crimes Act of Canada. Conventional international law means any convention, treaty, or other international agreement that's enforced to which Canada is a party, that is enforced with the provisions that Canada has agreed to accept and apply in an armed conflict to which it's involved. And the International Criminal Court means international criminal court established by the Rome Statute. So basically, Canada has acceded to the Rome Statute, the Geneva Convention, the 4 Geneva Conventions of 1949. They've also acceded to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Anyways, legal U.S. gun orders have 300 million guns and probably 1 trillion rounds of ammunition. Seriously, folks, if we were a problem, you'd know it. America was founded by tough hellraisers, rugged citizens who evaded taxes, spoke strongly against tyranny, grew tobacco, brewed beer and spirits, and smuggled weapons. It will be saved by only those same types of people. The original assault rifle, 1774, banned from import. 1775, British attempt confiscation. 1776, we break it off in their ass. Now, I've got to tell you, that we're getting to an area where I'm going to start using some real bad language, okay? But it's I'm not going to be saying it out of anger. Well, I did say it. That's part of intervention, okay? As part of the intervention, when I served these documents on these government officials, I served about a couple hundred. War is when your government tells you who the enemy is. Revolution is when you figure it out for yourself. A free people ought not only to be armed and disciplined, but they should have sufficient arms and ammunition to maintain a status of independence from any who might attempt to abuse them, which would include their own government. Come and take it. Any society that would give up a little liberty to gain a little security will deserve neither and lose both. Sacrificing freedoms for promises of safety and security is central to the worship of all false gods, and like all false gods, the sacrifice will never be enough. Armed citizens, the original Homeland Security. Second Amendment, defending my right not to be a victim since 1791. When liberty and freedom are at stake, your silence isn't golden, it's yellow. So, back to the topic at hand. This is talking about intervention. And this is actually, some of this is taken from a book on intervention in international law by Ellery C. Stowell in 1921. It's a Google scan book. Intervention eventually says that if they violate the law, then anything goes. If they don't follow their own law, then anything goes. And so that's the principle behind this letter. Okay, I served an 11-page personalized document by registered mail on the Queen, on the Governor General of Canada, on the Lieutenant Governor for Alberta, on the Prime Minister of Canada, on the Minister of Public Safety, every member of the Senate of Canada, that's 100 senators, the Premier of Alberta, the Attorney General for Canada, the Attorney General for Alberta, RCMP commissioners and deputy commissioners, numerous judges in Alberta, Calgary Chief of Police, deputies, and every member of the Police Commission, and the leopard sheep of police and every member of the police commission. And so I served this letter. It was basically about 11-page letter. Now we're going to start getting into it, and it's got some really bad language in it. And so YouTube is probably going to demonetize my video because of it. But whatever, I don't care. The point is this is the letter that I sent them, and then we'll talk about what happened as a result of it. And so it's called intervention. This is the front page of the first page of the letter. And so, let's go back. I sent it by registered mail, you see, and it's personalized. This one here went to a senator. And so then if you read paragraph 1, it says, "You, Andre Pratt, Senator, notice that I used to state that I accept your oath of office, but I already know you have no intention of honoring your oath of office, so fuck your oath, you motherfucking son of a bitch." And this is basically what I went along and said. I sent it out to these hundreds of people. "You, Andre Pratt, Senator, notice that you, or if one of your pigs wants a piece of me, just need a day and time, and I'll come armed, and we'll settle it for once and for all, you motherfucking son of a bitch. You, Andre Pratt, Senator, notice that I already know that you cowards will never take me up on that because you're cowards, and you do your best to make sure I'm not armed, so I have no way to defend myself when your pigs assault me. And it's all with your approval and consent, and with the approval and consent of your bought and paid for bar member judicial whores selling their justice, you motherfucking son of a bitch." No disrespect to dogs intended. And then I have a couple sites here. In doing this, I have occasion, incidentally, to events, how true it is that states and governments were made for man, and at the same time, how true it is that his creatures and servants at first deceived, next vilified, and at last oppressed their master and maker. A state like a merchant makes a contract, a dishonest state like a dishonest merchant willfully refuses to discharge it. And it goes on. You, Andre Pratt, Senator, notice that the word PIG is an acronym and stands for Persons in Government who Intend to Perjure their Oath, which means you're a pig. 2, you motherfucking son of a bitch. No disrespect to dogs intended. You, Andre Pratt, Senator, notice that I have never in my life breached the peace, you motherfucking son of a bitch. That's actually, I didn't, anyways, I customized those for men and women, and so that part of it right there, I guess I must have missed. Anyways, no disrespect to dogs intended. You, Andre Pratt, Senator, notice that your RCMP pigs and your border pigs and your various city pigs and your Alberta Sheriff pigs have breached the peace hundreds of times while operating in their private capacity as revenue officers. And then I have this site here, all laws must be lawful, allowed by common law or some statute if they're administered by persons in a private capacity, which basically is saying they can be in a public capacity or private capacity or not duly authorized. They're void. And those administering them are guilty of high contempt. And doing it without a warrant of the law, and that's Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 2. And it goes on. With their unlawful arrest when I had not breached the peace and there was no lawful court order. And then it's got some more sites. Any restraint, however slight, upon another's liberty to come and go as one pleases constitutes an arrest. An illegal arrest is an assault and battery, and a person so attempted to restrain of his liberty has the same right to use force in defending himself as he would in repelling any other assault and battery. Each person has a right to resist an unlawful arrest. In such case, the person attempting the arrest stands in the position of a wrongdoer and may be resisted by the use of force as in self-defense. Similarly, a person cannot be convicted of resisting a peace officer in the execution of his duty unless the peace officer was acting strictly within the limits of his powers and duty. If an officer makes an unlawful arrest, there's a common law right to resist that arrest. And that's actually a Police Manual of Arrest, Seizure, Interrogation. That's a Canadian publication. Roger Salhaney is a Canadian judge. It is all with your approval and consent, with the approval and consent of your bought and paid for bar member judicial whores selling their justice, you motherfucking son of a bitch. No disrespect to dogs intended. And then I have that site again about in doing this, I shall have occasion incidentally to events how true it is the states and governments were made for man. At the same time, how true it is his creatures and servants are first deceived, next vilified, and at last oppressed their master and maker. A state like a merchant makes a contract. A dishonest state like a dishonest merchant willfully refuses to discharge it. You, Andre Pratt, Senator, are noticed that your Parliament pigs have given the RCMP pigs and your border pigs and the various city pigs the right to assault, kidnap, falsely imprison, even murder anybody as long as they do it in good faith. And this is taken Section 25 of the Criminal Code of Canada, where a person is required or authorized by law to exercise a process or to carry out a sentence. That person or any person who assists them, if that person acts in good faith, is justified in executing the process or in carrying out the sentence, notwithstanding that the process or sentence is defective or that it was issued or imposed without jurisdiction or in excess of jurisdiction. And it is all with your approval and consent, with the approval and consent of your bought and paid for bar member judicial whores selling their justice, you motherfucking son of a bitch. No disrespect to dogs intended. And then I have those two sites then about a state like a merchant makes a contract, a dishonest state like a dishonest merchant willfully refuses to discharge it. And it continues. You, Andre Pratt, Senator, notice that whenever a judge is dealing with a statute, he's no longer a judge in his official capacity, but becomes a bought and paid for clerk masquerading as a judge operating in his private capacity. And then I got some cites here. When acting to enforce a statute and its subsequent amendments to the present date, the judge in municipal court is acting as an administrative officer and not in a judicial capacity. Courts administrating or enforcing statutes do not act judicially, but merely ministerially, but merely act as an extension, as an agent for the involved agency. And then another site is accepted rule not only state courts but the federal courts as well, that when a judge is enforcing administrative law, there is described as mere extensions of the administrative agency for superior reviewing purposes. As a ministerial clerk for the agency, judges who become involved in enforcement of mere statutes, civil or criminal in nature, act as clerks for the involved agency. And you're bought and paid for bar member whores, clerks masquerading as judges, sit there and play stupid so they can go ahead and facilitate the assaults, kidnappings, false imprisonments, and even murders as long as it's in good faith. And that's another cite from Section 25 of the Criminal Code of Canada. When a person is required or authorized by law to exercise a process or to carry out a sentence, that person or any person who assists them is, if that person acts in good faith, justified in executing the process or carrying out the sentence, notwithstanding that the process or sentence is defective or that it was issued or imposed without jurisdiction or in excess of jurisdiction. And it's all with your approval and consent, with the approval and consent of your bought and paid for bar member judicial whores selling their justice, you motherfucking son of a bitch. No disrespect to dogs intended. You, Andre Pratt, Senator, notice that bought and paid for clerks masquerading as judges cannot do anything judicial like issue warrants or orders, and if they attempt to do so, it's a fraud and a nullity. Ministerial officers are incompetent to receive grants of judicial power from the legislature. Their acts in attempting to exercise such powers are necessarily nullities. Therefore, it's a kangaroo court. A kangaroo court term descriptive of a sham legal proceeding in which a person's rights are totally disregarded, in which the result is a foregone conclusion because of the bias of the court or other tribunal. And a void judgment, where there is no jurisdiction, there is no judge, the proceeding is as nothing. Such has been the law from the days of Marshal Saya. And that's a federal court site, but they're citing the Supreme Court, which cites 10 Coke 68, which is Coke in the 1500s. And a void judgment is one which is no force or legal effect whatever. It's an absolute nullity. A void judgment, insofar as it purports to be a pronouncement of court, is an absolute nullity. A void order may be attacked directly or collaterally at any time. And it's all with your approval and consent, and with the approval and consent of your bought and paid for bar member judicial whores selling their justice, you motherfucking son of a bitch. And again, it goes back to the Chisholm versus Georgia cites. A state like a merchant makes a contract. A dishonest state like a dishonest merchant willfully refuses to discharge it. You, Andre Pratt, Senator, notice that your pigs have assaulted me, kidnapped me, falsely imprisoned me, and your United Nations bail priest whores on the bench, clerks masquerading as judges, are their accomplices, and it's all with your approval and consent, and the approval and consent of your bought and paid for bar member judicial whores selling their justice, you motherfucking son of a bitch. And those sites, we've talked about them. You, Andre Pratt, Senator, notice that I am traveling to the land of Alberta, which I have previously served, you motherfucking sons of bitches, with documents stating that I'm not interested in being your criminal corporation. And this is another site that's from Chisholm versus Georgia, which more of it's on the next page. A state does not owe its origin to the government of the United States in the highest or any of its branches. It was in existence before it. It derives its authority from the same and pure sacred source as the self, the voluntary, deliberate choice of the people. A state is altogether exempt from the jurisdiction of the courts of the United States or any other exterior authority unless in special instances where the general government has power derived from the Constitution itself. The question to be determined is whether this state, so respectable and whose claims soar so high, is amenable to the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court of the United States. This question, important in itself, will depend on others, more important still, and may perhaps be ultimately resolved in one no less radical in this: do the people of the United States form a nation? By that law, the several states and governments, and this is a big picture of the next page, spread over the globe as forming a society, not a nation. Okay, it's a corporation. Okay, so in 1794, when Chisholm versus Georgia was done, there was no nations on the planet except the USA. But your pigs went ahead and assaulted me. So what I was saying essentially is that Canada is a corporation, and they already know it anyways, but I was supporting it. But your pigs went ahead and assaulted me, kidnapped me, and falsely imprisoned me in United Nations bail priest whores like Redmond, Rook, LaGrandier, Tillman, Bernard, Benkendorf, Bernard, and others became their accomplices under your satanic unidroit-controlled and regulated Uniform Commercial Code. And whenever the Uniform Commercial Code creates a presumption with respect to a fact and provides that a fact is presumed, the trier of fact must find the existence of the fact unless until evidence is introduced that supports a finding of its non-existence. And then in 3.308 it says, in an action with respect to an instrument, the authenticity of an authority to make each signature on the instrument are admitted unless specifically denied in the pleadings. And then 8.114, the following rules apply in an action on a certificate of security against the issuer unless specifically denied in the pleadings. Each signature on a security certificate or in a necessary endorsement is admitted. When they assaulted me with their Sestake trust, but individuals when they assaulted me with their Sestake trust, but individuals when acting as representatives of a collective group cannot be said to be exercising their personal rights and duties, nor be entitled to their purely personal privileges. Rather, they assume the rights, duties, and privileges of the artificial entity or association of which they are agents or officers, and they are bound by its obligations. And then the Sestake trust is yet still it was found difficult to set bounds to ecclesiastical ingenuity, for they were driven out of their former holes. They devised a new method of conveyance by which lands were granted, not to themselves directly, but to nomina fiefs to the use of the religious houses, thus distinguishing between the possession and the use and the receiving the actual profits, while the season of the land remained in the nomina fief, who was held by the courts of equity, then under the direction of the clergy, to be bound in conscience to his Sestake use for the rents and emoluments of the estate. And it is to these inventions that our practitioners are indebted to the introduction of the uses and trusts, the foundation of modern conveyancing. And so that's Tomlin's Law Dictionary. And so, again, it talks about the Sestake use. And so they assaulted me with the Sestake use. And then we have the Sestake V Act. Okay, Sestake V remained beyond sea for 7 years together, and no proof of their lives, judge in action to direct a verdict as though the Sestake V were dead, as such person or persons in whose life or lives such estates have been, shall be granted as aforesaid, shall remain beyond seas or elsewhere absent themselves in this realm by the space of 7 years together, and no sufficient or evident proof be made of the lives of such person or persons respectively in any action commenced for recovery of such tenements by the lessors or reversioners. In every such case, the person or persons upon whose life or lives such estate dependent shall be accounted as naturally dead, and in every action brought for the recovery of such tenements by the lessors and reversioners, as heirs or assigns, the judges before whom such action shall be brought shall direct the jury to give the verdict as if the person so remaining beyond the seas or otherwise absent himself or dead. That's the Sestake V Act of 1666. And he sold me into slavery. He, the prisoner, as a consequence of his crime, not only forfeited his liberty, but all his personal rights, except for those which law and its humanity affords him. He is, for the time being, a slave of the state. And it is all with your approval and consent, and I'm not going to rest until I see these pigs and their pig bar member whore handlers do that little dance they do at the end of a common law rope. You motherfucking son of a bitch. No disrespect to dogs intended. And if a man be found stealing any of his brother and children of Israel, make merchandise of him or selleth him, then that thief shall die. Thou shalt put evil away from among you. Therefore, I will always be traveling heavily armed, and if your coward pigs want to unlawfully arrest me, we'll settle it for once and for all, you motherfucking son of a bitch. No disrespect to dogs intended. And then I got back those state like a merchant makes a contract, a dishonest state like a dishonest merchant willfully refuses to discharge it. You, Andre Pratt, Senator, notice that you're a pig United Nations bail priest bar member whores masquerading as judges. Know that you're coward border pigs and you're coward RCMP pigs and you're coward city pigs and you're coward sheriff pigs routinely engage in false arrest and false imprisonment, and they want to sit there and play stupid so they can collect their royalties. Because you're coward border pigs and you're coward RCMP pigs and you're coward city pigs and you're coward sheriff pigs bring them so much business, you motherfucking son of a bitch. And the only thing the plaintiff needs to do is allege false arrest, as either that the defendant cop made an arrest or imprisonment, or that the defendant cop affirmatively instigated, encouraged, incited, started a fight, or caused the arrest or imprisonment. When the plaintiff has shown that he was arrested, imprisoned, or restrained of his liberty by the defendant cop, the law presumes it to be unlawful. The burden is upon the defendant cop to show that the arrest was by authority of law. Any arrest made without proper warrant, signed by a judge, backed up by an affidavit from two persons that states under penalty of perjury you have broken a contract or hurt someone, if challenged by the defendant, is presumptively invalid. The burden is on the state to justify it as authorized by statute. It does not violate the constitutional provisions or human rights. In the case of illegal arrest, the officer cop must keep within the law at his peril. You, Andre Pratt, Senator, notice that since you're coward border pigs and you're coward RCMP pigs and you're coward city pigs and you're coward sheriff pigs obviously intend to engage in warfare against me no matter what I say or do. A mixed war is one which is made on one side by public authority and the other by mere private persons. We'll settle it for once and for all with your coward pigs, and any bloodshed is on your hands, and it will all be with your approval and consent, you motherfucking son of a bitch. No disrespect to dogs intended. And those sites, you've read them before. You, Andre Pratt, Senator, notice that I have the right to resist an unlawful arrest with lethal force if necessary. An illegal arrest is an assault and battery. The person so attempted to restrain of his liberty has the same right to use force in defending himself as he would in repelling any other assault and battery. Each person has the right to resist an unlawful arrest. In such a case, the person attempting the arrest stands in the position of a wrongdoer and may be resisted by the use of force as in self-defense. Similarly, a person cannot be convicted of resisting a peace officer in the execution of his duty unless that officer was acting strictly within the limits of his powers and duties. If the officer makes an unlawful arrest, then there's a common law right to resist that arrest. And I shall be heavily armed, and I shall exercise my right to resist any unlawful arrest by your RCMP pigs or your border pigs or your city pigs or your Alberta sheriff pigs, you motherfucking son of a bitch. And that site is... We already saw that. You, Andre Pratt, Senator, notice that Canada border pigs and your RCMP pigs and your city pigs engage in war crimes by persecuting me for my political beliefs and enslaving me and torturing me in violation of the Crimes Against Humanity and the War Crimes Act of Canada. And especially with your persecutions of me or anyone like me that you label with the freeman on the land status or sovereign citizen or anti-government, when we try to say we have rights, and especially in light of the fact that the North America west of the colonies defined in the Royal Proclamation of 1763 is under a military occupation as defined by Hague Convention 4, the Libre Code, and the Geneva Convention relative to the treatment of civilians in a time of war of 1949. And this is Hague Convention 4, which territory is considered occupied when it's actually placed under the authority of the hostile army. The occupation extends only to territory where such authority has been established and can be exercised. It's Article 42. And then the Libre Code, Article 1, a place, district, or country occupied by the enemy stands in consequence of occupation under the martial law of the invading army or occupying army, whether any proclamation declaring martial law or any public warning to the inhabitants has been issued or not. Martial law is the immediate and direct effect and consequence of occupation and conquest. The presence of the hostile army proclaims its martial law. Martial law does not cease during the hostile occupation except by special proclamation mission ordered by the Commander-in-Chief or by special mention in the Treaty of Peace concluding the war. And that's Article 2 of the Lieber Code. And then Article 6 of the Geneva Convention, we talked about that already, talks about a bunch of articles that still apply to this day. And it is all with your approval and consent, and with the approval and consent of your bought and paid for bar member judicial whores selling their justice, you motherfucking son of a bitch. No disrespect to dogs intended. You, Andre Pratt, Senator, notice that your border pigs and your RCMP pigs and your city pigs and your Alberta Sheriff pigs are engaged in war crimes as underlined below, and extensive appropriation of property not justified by military necessity and carried out unlawfully and wantonly, compelling other protected person to serve in the forces of the hostile power, willfully depriving other protected persons of the rights of fair and regular trial, unlawful confinement, and other serious violations, namely any of the following acts: intentionally directing attacks against individual civilians not taking direct part in hostilities, intentionally directing attacks against civilian objects, objects which are not military objectives, intentionally launching an attack, injury to civilians or damage to civilian objects, destroying or seizing enemy's property, declaring abolished, suspended, or inadmissible in a court of law the rights or and actions of the nationals in the hostile party, pillaging, committing outrages on the personal dignity, in particular humiliating and degrading treatment. And it's all with your approval and consent, with the approval and consent of your bought and paid for bar member judicial whores selling their justice, you motherfucking son of a bitch. No disrespect to dogs intended. You, Andre Pratt, Senator, notice that you want to know more about your pigs and their show trial and their kangaroo court. Check out a few of my over 300 YouTube videos, you motherfucking son of a bitch. And then I got a bunch of them listed, and we're not going to go through those. And then this is the last paragraph. Andre Pratt, Senator, we're all here before this universe was created, and we'll all be here when it goes away, and before God, angels, and anyone who reads this as a witness, I shake the dust of the earth, mop my feet against you, and we'll be talking about this on Judgment Day, Satanist, you motherfucking son of a bitch. No disrespect to dogs intended. And I have that cite again. In doing this, I have occasioned incidentally to events how true it is that states and governments were made for man, and at the same time how true it is that his creatures and servants at first deceived, next vilified, and at last oppressed their master and maker. A state like a merchant makes a contract, a dishonest state like a dishonest merchant willfully refuses to discharge it. So, anyways, that's what I sent them. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow me on Steemit at Sovereignty International. Don't forget to like this video. On YouTube, don't forget to click the bell next to the subscribe button so that you're notified when there's a new upload. On Steemit, don't forget to vote and make your comments. And I've got a link for my BitChute channel as well. This is the front page of my channel. The subscribe button's already clicked, otherwise it'll be red. The bell, the arrow is pointing at the bell. You have to click on the bell and a pop-up will come up and you have to check a box and then click OK to be notified of uploads. This is Steemit. The left arrow is pointing at how you can do upvotes. The middle arrow is the number of upvotes, and the right arrow is where you can make comments. And this is Steemit again, Crypto Wallet. The little hand is touching Crypto Wallet. The window comes down and you can follow or unfollow someone. So this is what happened. The issue was over Rook, okay? And remember I talked about him, and we're going to talk some more. But new Court of Queen's Bench of Alberta Chief Justice appointed by Prime Minister. This is the 27th of February. This was like, I sent all of these letters this year. Okay, so we'll say within 2 weeks or so of me sending that letter, they appointed a, normally, see, Rook was an associate chief judge of the Court of Queen's Bench in Alberta. And there was a chief judge. As a matter of fact, his name was Neil Whitman, if you look here on the bottom in the text. And so he had retired. When the chief judge retired, normally the associate chief judge just takes his place, moves into that position. And that's what normally happens. That's what's always happened for as long as I can remember. And so, and normally the associate chief judge just takes over the chief judge position until he retires. And so Rook was the associate chief judge. And we'll talk about what Rook did here pretty soon. And they bypassed Rook. They appointed someone else. They circumvented him. I mean, that's like major insult. And so, so that's good. Okay, they bypassed Rook. Now, They appointed a chief judge bypassing Rook. All judges, and this is another thing, is that I talking to a friend of mine, and all these judges, there's a big investigation going on against judges in Canada, and the Canada border pigs are under investigation too. So we do have good public servants, okay? There are crooks amongst them, there's no doubt about it. But if you don't bring up the right issues, this is called intervention. And you wanna and back, if you think about it, back in the old days when they had chivalry and stuff like that, they didn't have these pigs running around doing the kind of stuff they do, because they would have turned up dead. I mean, they would have come up to some guy trying to generate revenue, and they would have got themselves into a gunfight, is what would have happened, and somebody would have been dead. If the pig would have been dead, then the guy would have been exonerated, and if the guy would have been dead, then the pig would have been hung, probably. You see what I'm saying? And so we all need to start standing up for our rights, is what needs to happen, and let the chips fall where they may. We don't just cave into these pigs. This is Rook's decision in Meads versus Meads. It's a divorce case. And this is a 280-page document where it was 188, I think. Anyways, where he went and did this, what we're going to talk about. He did this. This is the table of contents. The thing it was 188 pages. He had a table of contents of the thing. Anyways, introduction to organized pseudo-commercial agreement litigants. Okay. And so they were persecuting, if you go down to the highlighted stuff, freemen on the land, sovereign men, sovereign citizens. He was basically set it up to have all these people persecuted in Alberta. And you can't file paperwork. If you do file paperwork into a court, you cannot put your name down the way you want to put it. I mean, it's all this other stuff, this pseudo-commercial argument. Meads versus Mead is 188-page reasons for judgment, persecutes anybody who uses what he calls an organized pseudo-commercial argument. He even mentioned my name in the thing. And the border pigs in their paperwork said that I'm extremely anti-government as justification for their assault, kidnapping, and false imprisonment. And so they're clearly engaged in all sorts of war crimes, and Judgment Day's coming, okay? And I'm going to go up there, and I'm going to have guns, and they're not going to stop me at the border, or we'll have it out right then and there, the fucking pigs. And don't get me going. And so these people are pigs, and we'll settle it right then and there, no matter what. They want to fucking unlawfully arrest me, then we'll settle it right then and there. But I don't think that's what's going to happen. I'll bet you. I actually had a dream, and in that dream, I go up to the border. I'm driving up to the border, and they poke their head out the window, and they wave me through, and I'll probably give them the finger. Anyways, I don't know what I do. I'm sure I just go. Anyways, that's the end of the video. This is called intervention, and it's perfectly appropriate under international law because they're not even following their own rules. They're nothing but a bunch of thieves and criminals, and Judgment Day's coming. And thanks for watching.